Defending the faith. It's been something that Christians have done since the beginning of Christian history. Now, no one would say that it's something we shouldn't do today, but where does it kind of fit in this generation and in this society with this technology? So this is Eric Slay with DWM Penn Guy.
This is Alex Burks.
And today we're going to talk about the role of apologetics, or the defense of the Christian faith, or any faith, in today's world. So to get it started, this is kind of something I've been working through for quite a while. And I think in my watching of Catholic apologists, I've noticed that they do use pretty much the same method and the same format that the Protestant apologists that I learned from do. And so this is really kind of a universal question. Now, obviously, in our first programs, we basically did apologetics. So certainly no one's going to argue that it's invalid. However, in our last program, I think we started hinting at what may be a significant issue with it. And it's not really a new issue in this regard, but I have discovered that, especially with technical areas like science, unless you are trained thoroughly in it and you can handle technical arguments, then, as you were kind of hinting at last time, either you're just going to bombard a non-specialist with information that neither one of you can process and just kind of look like a jerk or a disconnected weirdo, or you're going to get schooled. Even if the other person's arguments are completely invalid, you're going to get schooled because you can't keep up.
Yeah, and I think I agree. The interesting thing for me is the reason that I initially left Christianity was because I had a lot of questions and I wasn't getting a lot of answers, or at least not answers that satisfied me. So it was more like, and my dad, God bless him, when I was, 13, asking about, the Gnostic Gospels and the canon of Scripture, he just wasn't necessarily intellectually equipped to deal with those questions, right? So I assumed that no one was. And so it was kind of a beautiful thing as I, investigated Christianity anew, that I was able to find questions that were sufficient, or answers that were sufficient for my questions.
So that's a good example of the value of apologetics, obviously. And for me also, it was my belief, and not to regurgitate our controversy from the last episode, but for me, it's just objectively true that for me, evolution was the stumbling block that kept me from faith, and I needed answers to that in order to believe. At the end of my atheist time, I desperately wanted to believe. I just didn't believe. I just had no confidence that it was possible. And so for both of us, it sounds like our atheist time was driven by, well, maybe enabled would be a better term, enabled by having, it was enabled by having no answers, and then unenabled by having answers.
Precisely. So, yeah.
So I guess the question is, where is that line? Because I don't know. The classical model of apologetics, you might call it, that both Catholic and Protestant apologists use, basically puts every worldview into a box, goes through the primary documents for that tradition, responds to them in depth, and says, or hopefully, you try to steel man the position also by, which, by the way, I learned that steel manning is the opposite of straw manning, and it means to respond to the best presentation of a position possible, in case anyone was wondering out there. You try to steel man a position by also finding who you believe is the best representative of that position, and then engaging in a formal, moderated academic debate with them. That's kind of classical apologetics in the, I'd say, from probably the mid 20th century to the present. And that's where I've kind of run into a lot of issues. Is I'm never going to suggest there's no value to that. I think the problem is twofold, though. The first one is that idea of boxing, of putting worldviews into boxes and assuming that because the official sources for this tradition teach this, that A, they aren't self-contradictory, which I have encountered, or B, that everyone believes the sources fully. It's like you study the Book of Mormon and you listen to a good debate with a good representative of Mormon, you're like, now I'm ready to evangelize Mormons. And what you actually encounter can throw you for a loop. I remember 10 years ago talking to a couple of Mormon girls at UWM, and they got kind of back-footed by the whole, when you really pressed them on stuff. And a lot of their appeal was just really subjective, right out of the Book of Mormon, which has lots of subjective appeals about how you feel, and you should pray to see if it's true and stuff. And it's like, what do you do in those moments then? If you're going out expecting, now I know how to interact with Mormons.
Well, I would say that it helps to be as objective as possible. And it helps, you or I, because we were once, though we were born into some form of Christianity, we left. And so we kind of had to come back in and rebuild the entire thing from scratch. And so I think it helps to attempt to be as objective as possible, while also keeping an open mind, not being dogmatic about things. And I also think meeting people as individuals and not necessarily as monolithic representations of their worldview, right? And so there's on the bright side, that allows you to build a genuine kind of rapport with an individual that you're having a conversation with. On the other hand, the detriment is when you meet someone who claims to adhere to belief system and then denies the tenets of that belief system. And so it's kind of a weird place to be when you're talking this one in real time with that. But it's, that's okay. And you also meet people in that second category that haven't necessarily defined their worldview. And some people just, that's not their kind of mode for operating with the world they find themselves in.
Yeah. And so we're basically saying I think that having a background knowledge now on a personal level, this has to be done very, very carefully, because you can actually find yourself in some cases knowing more about what this person is supposed to believe than they do. Mm-hmm. And obviously this could end very badly very quickly if you kind of show them up without meaning to and make them feel like bad Mormons or bad Muslims or Catholics or Protestants or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that's one trap to avoid. But again, it's also that matter of, are you encountering there is always the danger also that certain traditions are very complex. I think we would agree that the both of them that we belong to are very complex, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Catholicism, and I don't think of myself as Reformed, but it's what I learned, Reformed Protestantism. There isn't like one set of tenets in a nice list of 10, whereby you've got all the major issues down for either one of these, I don't think.
No, and I think for me, well, I've heard an analogy. It's like apologetics can be like karate or something, you know. And do you learn karate to defend yourself, or do you learn karate so you can go to bars and pick fights, and then be able to really, clear house when someone responds in kind? That's not what apologetics should be. And I think apologetics at its best should be, um, at the very least in the Christian sense, an opportunity for you to grow closer to God, and because you're learning more about God,